Hello and welcome to Manibil, and welcome to my God knows what number, 33, something like that, a part of my deconstruction of Keith Frankish's lecture series on illusionism. And this is getting to be a little tedious for me. I'm sort of torn between I really want to get this over with, um, and but I also want to, get it done, right? And there are many reasons why I would like to stop this now, but I'm sort of carrying on and trying to not spend too much time more than I need to deconstruct it. But the objections to illusionism this lecture fall, I might do what is needed and then be a little more um, flexible in the next parts, right, to get it over with. It's very long-winded, and into the best of my understanding, he basically repeats the same argument for each objection, and so against each objection, right? It's like saying, yeah, there's this other objection, but it's an illusion, right? Okay, so then there's this objection, but it's an illusion. It's sort of, yeah, but I don't find it's hugely disappointing, this, right? Okay, before I head into this one, I just, as I subscribe to the Moscow Center for Consciousness Studies channel on YouTube, I was reminded there's a new lecture series up, right? Just to keep me busy. And this is called, and it's by somebody called Timothy Bain, of course, a professor of philosophy, Monash University. And it's the problems of other minds. It's not even the problem, right? It's the problems of other minds, right? So it's like, no. We can't just have one problem, right? We have to make sure that there's a lot of problems so we can bring in more academics to study all these problems, right? It's like, it's just, it's what's it called? Like, it breeds like rabbits. Academia, right? Academia creates more use or necessity for more academia and so on, if you get my drift, right? Um, it's like, can't you just stick to the problem of other minds? Is it because they don't understand the problem of other minds, or um, I'm just, man. So it's like, no, I need to deconstruct this at some point. And I bet you it's probably even more boring than this one, or at least in the same. I mean, I'm already having bad vibes, right? And just to, give you a tasty precursor here, right? The first lecture is 42 minutes, then 49 minutes, then 1 hour, and then 1 hour and 1 hour and 1 hour, right? So it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 hours to tell you and illuminate you on the problem of other minds, right? 6 fucking hours, man, right? Can you believe it? I mean, and then what about if they were making a lecture series on the hard problem of consciousness? Then you could probably find someone who could spend another 6 hours on the hard problem of consciousness, right? I can give you the answer within 5 minutes and probably make a pretty good case for it, right? Why? Well, it's because they have been trained to be like this. It's like the answer must be clouded in huge piles of fluff, so nobody can figure it out. So they can say, well, that's just because you're half stupid midwit, right? So you need to give us money to be professors so we can sit here and make a big think, right? It's just like, it's symptomatic, right? Spending 6 hours on the problem of other minds. I mean, are you fucking kidding me, right? What could possibly be in there, right? Oh, man. Oh. Okay, so I'm not going to run out of, potential topics anytime soon, right? Okay, so let's keep this the problem of other minds on the back burner for a while, right? Okay, so we were at the around the 47 something minute mark with Keith Frankish, and let's head into it.
Need. Functional subjectivity itself creates the impression of qualitative subjectivity. When I say impression here, I mean it creates a psychological impression. It leads us to interpret our inner lives as populated with phenomenal properties. So here's a little anecdote that might be applicable here. It's from the philosopher Elizabeth Anscombe, and she's describing an encounter with Ludwig Wittgenstein. And Anscombe says this: Wittgenstein once greeted me with the question, why do people say that it was natural to think that the sun went round the earth rather than that the earth turned on its axis? And Anscombe goes on, I replied, I suppose because it looked as if the sun went round the earth. Well, he asked, what would it have looked like if it had looked as if the earth turned on its axis? It would have looked the same, of course. It's a matter of how you interpret the scene that you're looking at. And maybe we can apply a similar thought to introspection.
Yes, and then be careful, because you are actually pointing out that this kind of introspection can be dangerous because you might get it wrong, right? Or not completely right. Now, this thing about the sun and the earth and how things move about, this is just a scientific approach to things, right? Science basically says, okay, I have a theory and I'm not going to bring in any other evidence than what I can experience, right? Or any possible refutation have to be based on experience, right? You can't say that somebody told me last night in a dream that the earth is a sphere, right? You can't use that as evidence for your theory, right? Or evidence pro or for, how should I put it? If evidence doesn't invalidate the theory, then, or the hypothesis, again about these words, or maybe hypothesis is the best thing, right? The hypothesis is not validated by the evidence, but if it doesn't invalidate the evidence, the hypothesis is still holding up, right? The problem with the Earth-centric system was that there were things that couldn't be explained, right? There was things it had to move this way because the Earth is the center, and then they look at the sky and say, well, it doesn't actually fit this hypothesis that the Earth is in the center of all the elements moving around in the sky, right? So when they tried to put the sun in the center, a lot of this stuff was actually, explained, right? Or there were not the same amount of evidence that didn't support the you could say, right? So that's a better theory because there are less bad stuff in the evidence that argues against it, right? Now there might be a little small problem in how do you interpret evidence against, right? So when yes, you can say if you have a car and somebody says there's a hole in your car, and you look and you look and you look, if you just spend 2 seconds looking at your car and say I can't find a hole, that proves there isn't a hole. No, because you haven't covered all bases, right? So you keep looking and keep looking and keep looking for this hole, right? And until you find that hole, the hypothesis that there isn't a hole, or the null hypothesis you could call it, as some call it, right? There isn't a hole. Holes, right? So it's like, if you say there's a hole, I will have the theory, or it's trying to punch a hole in the theory that there isn't a hole in the car, right? So if you keep looking at the car and you're not finding a hole, the theory that there isn't a hole in the car still holds. Until that hole is found, then the hypothesis no longer holds, right? So all these sort of cherry-picked situations, just be careful with these kinds of arguments, because it's sort of the five blind men and the elephant. I don't remember exactly what it's called, that analogy. Somebody touches the trunk, one touching the ivory, and one is touching the tail and the ears, and they all have various different versions of what they're doing. So if you want to prove that an elephant is hard and the ivory, then you touch the ivory and say, see, elephant is hard, right? Or if you touch the trunk, then you would say it's sort of soft and whatever, right? Hairy, sound like a trumpet, right? So it's just be careful with these. The takeaway about science is it's an attempt at a prediction, and the prediction can only be refuted by empiricism, right? And it as long as there's nobody who can tell you that you should follow some hypothesis just because it hasn't been refuted yet. But you can't say that all the evidence that has been found that didn't refute it yet is invalid, you could say, right? The more and more you try to poke at it, at that car, for instance, the less and less and less likely it is that there is actually a hole in it, right? You can't say it hasn't been, refuted yet, because at what point would you it's up to human imagination and so on to figure out whether or not there actually is a hole in some kind of hypothesis, right? It took, from in the 1500s or whatever, 1600 with, I don't remember exactly the years, but Newton, right? Until the 20th century, right? In the 16th century, until the 20th century with Einstein, for somebody to sort of come up with the idea that there might actually be something wrong here. Maybe people knew that before that, but they didn't know how to approach it, right? But it's like at that point somebody actually sat down and said, this doesn't work completely. There's a problem here, right? And I'm going to show you the problem. And then, appeal to some kind of evidence that would be able to align itself with the hypothesis is this. And if you can show me this evidence, you can prove or disprove it. You can prove it, right? I would say be careful with proof, because maybe that you have seen some part of the car doesn't mean that you've seen all of the car, right? Until you sort of mapped out the whole car. And when we are talking about the universe, right, or even the earth, no one person can experience everything that goes on everywhere, right? So if we have sort of a hypothesis about what we call gravity, then we say, okay, there hasn't been found any, loopholes in gravity and in Einstein holes and all that. So we are sort of taking for granted that it's going to work everywhere. But we have no evidence for that, right? We're just extrapolating it into the unknown, right? Now that is both a strength and a weakness. Maybe it's a strength of science, but the weakness is that we sort of have come to that point where we sort of, it hasn't been refuted within whatever, so it holds. It has been proven, right? I wouldn't support that, right? And maybe this is sort of a philosophy of science and so on, right? Which is sort of a very important to understand what you're doing when you're actually doing science. So, and because things are put together this way, sort of a skeptical approach to knowledge and hypotheses and so on, it also points to why people can circumvent your mind with things like God, right? Because what they're saying, there is a hole out there where there's a God, and the car is so big that you can't, they say that the hole is where that part of your car you can't get to. So you end up saying, okay, I guess I'll have to accept that there's a hole there, right? Because I can't disprove it, right? And it's written in a book, and divine intervention and back in history, and so all these stories that sort of and oppresses you and say, if you don't do as you're told, you'll end up in hell, and then people say, okay, I believe in there's a hole, at the ass end of this car, right? So this is the manipulation of the skeptical, and it's the correct way to approach science and knowledge, right? And somebody like Stefan Molyneux would say, I don't like that. I can't be certain. So I have to force certainty on people. Please, right? Okay, let's head in. Sorry for that
Many
long
people
rant.
find it very natural to think that their inner lives involve direct acquaintance with mental qualities, with phenomenal properties. So why is it natural for them to take that view? Well, I suppose because it seems as if we do have an inner world of mental qualities. That's how it seems to us. But what would it seem?
I'm just a little confused about this Wittgenstein quote. They said, well, he asked, what would it have looked like if it had looked as if? What would it have looked like if it had looked like? It sort of seems like double, right? Maybe he's misquoting there, but what would it have looked like if it looked like? It does seem double, right? I don't have too much patience with people sort of like Wittgenstein, right? And there's also something I've noticed, that there are a lot of British philosophers who are very into Wittgenstein. I've always thought that that's weird, right? This German, Austrian, whatever guy, right? Why are there so many British people interested in Wittgenstein? Oh, he moved to Britain, right? And worked with Bertrand Russell and whatever, right? And lived there for some years. That's why, because he was acquainted with Bertrand Russell, right? So therefore, it has become part of the curriculum of British philosophy or British universities, because Wittgenstein, and Bertrand Russell, so they're not into Leibniz or Immanuel Kant or Hegel, but Wittgenstein, because he actually planted his ass in Britain. Therefore, Britons think it's important to learn about Wittgenstein. That's just, why is that? It's it's just one of those things, right?
What would it have seemed like if it had seemed like introspection misrepresented us as having an...
I want to point out that, okay, so what would it have looked like if this? Well, it would have looked the same. Okay, so how do you know which one it is? Well, I don't then, right? If it's the same. So it's I have lost contact with his argument. I have no strong sense of any coherence, I'm repeating myself now, right? It's kind of annoying because I've spent a lot of time trying to deconstruct this, hoping that there would be something tangible to hang on to and say, okay, this is what they mean when they're talking illusions, right? It feels to me that he's just adding words to the, and finding, cherry picking, whatever, and at some point you're sort of going to give up and say, okay, I guess he has some kind of point, right? I don't buy that.
In a world of mental qualities, well, again, it would seem the same. It would produce the same range of beliefs and intuitions and reactions and so on. Okay, so that's my response to the zombie objection. Again, we need to make a distinction. The illusionist isn't denying that we have an inner life. They're proposing a reconceptualization of what our inner life involves. Here's another objection. This one comes up very often. And again, I think it's often taken to be a knockdown objection against illusionism. But I think
A knockdown, okay. I'm listening.
it just involves a misunderstanding of what illusionism is claiming. So let me set this out. The suggestion is that illusionism isn't coherent for the following reason. This is what the
No, but why wouldn't you write it coherently? The point is not it's not a question. It's a claim. You should write illusionism isn't coherent. That is the gap problem, right? Illusionism isn't coherent. It's not in the question, is illusionism coherent? It's just this way of presenting things that is so fucking annoying, man, right? And that sort of, you lose contact with what he's not strict in his presentation style, right? It's sort of where he slowly, the foundation, philosophical foundation we are standing on in his presentation here is slowly taking pieces away and removing the carpet here, and sort of you have to, I have to balance 7 balls at the same time, and sort of I'm confused, and after 1.5 hours I'm sort of like, what the hell just happened? What's the takeaway here? Or I had to cherry pick something or pick out something at minute 47 and something at minute 1 hour and 12. And these are the hardcore points that should be the takeaway of this lecture, but it's sort of drowned in a 1.5 hour of bullshit, right? Maybe not bullshit, that is strong, but filler words, right? Word salad. And this, right? Oh, it's annoying, man.
realist says. When it comes to phenomenal consciousness, there can be no gap between appearance and reality. If it seems to me that I am having a certain conscious experience, having an experience of phenomenal redness, say, then I am having that experience. If it seems to me that I'm in pain, then I am in pain.
Yeah. How else would you experience it, right? How else would you approach it? If I stick my hand in boiling water, right, and my mind says this is fucking hot, right? Should I stand there and say, yeah, but it could be an illusion somehow? It's just what its likeness to be. Okay, let's get further into it, right? Maybe I'm a little premature here, right?
An illusion of pain, an illusion of phenomenal pain would be phenomenal pain. Phenomenal consciousness cannot be illusory. The appearance is the same as the reality. The appearance of being in pain, the introspective appearance of being in pain.
Okay, so now we are now he's heading into this sort of the foundational metaphysical problem that I've been eluding you and also and pointing out problems in all sorts of other situations like Stefan Molyneux, but which Bernardo Kastrup actually gets, right? And that's why he's sort of my favorite at this point, even though I there's a lot of his other conclusions I certainly do not support, right? But at least he gets this point. this guy doesn't, right? He doesn't understand that he's not experiencing a thing outside. He's at most experiencing a representation of that outside. Now this is this seems to be important. So let me be careful. I get it very clearly what he says.
Appearance of being acquainted with phenomenal redness or the phenomenal quality of tasting coffee or whatever.
Now again, I need to point out, I'm trying to get back into an understanding what he's trying to say. I might get it here, right? Phenomenal redness. What's the difference between redness and phenomenal redness, right? Why does he add the word phenomenal? I don't get it. Because they're not two different kinds of redness. And maybe that's the crux of this argument, the gap argument here, right? And I pointed out earlier that he seems to create a gap between something that is red and redness and what is like to be redness or something like that. It creates new categories or levels of experience where he can sort of stay with one and leave the other behind and something like that, right? Like you want to have your cake and eat it too, right? Because he can't get around. He's sitting here presenting his lecture series using qualia, right? Otherwise, if the qualia themselves were illusory, why the hell would he create something that is based on qualia, right? So he has to be somehow able to split qualia up in that part that you do use and the other part that is illusory, something like that, right? Otherwise, I'm completely lost here, right? And it might seem that this objection is along the lines that I've been on so far in this lecture series.
Is the same thing as the reality. There's no gap between appearance and reality when it comes to phenomenal consciousness. Here's so that of course means that illusionism is incoherent, because the illusionist is saying, well, we just have the appearance of being in pain, but the appearance of being in pain is the same thing as being in pain. So illusionism doesn't make sense. It's proposing to replace pain with the appearance of pain, but the appearance of pain is pain, so it's circular. Here's a little quotation from the philosopher John Searle. Where consciousness is concerned, the existence of the appearance is the reality. If it seems to me exactly as if I'm having conscious experiences, then I am having conscious experiences. And I think Searle sees that as a knockdown argument against any position of this kind. And I think many people think that's a pretty powerful argument. So how does the illusionist respond? Well, the illusionist is going to say something like this. They're going to ask, what does it mean to seem to be having a reddish experience? Illusionists want to say that we seem to be acquainted with phenomenal properties. I just said it earlier.
You can't just... Why are you bringing in the word seem? Right? Seem to be having, that sounds like bad English also. To seem to be having, it must be, right? Otherwise, and I'm not British, but English is not my mother language, my what's it like? Home language. What does it mean to seem to be? Why are you bringing in those words? I'm not talking about it seems I have, right? I am having red experience, right? I'm having red experience. I'm not saying it seems that I have. Be having. I seem to be having. No, red experience, right? There is red experience. I'm looking at something red now, right? Or there's something in the direction on which I'm looking, there is something red. It's not, why would I say it seems to be red? There's no difference for me if I say seem to be red or red. So I'm sticking to red. Why would I add seem to it, right? It's like you're bringing in sort of a sort of doubt about your experience, right? by saying seem, it's like, yeah, it seems, right? But it might be illusion, right? So by adding words, you're trying to prove something, right? That's fucking sophistry. And I don't like it.
But what does that mean? Now, the objector here is assuming that it means something like this. Having an experience with the same phenomenal feel as a reddish experience. Similarly, seeming to have a pain experience means having an experience with the same phenomenal feel as a pain experience. Okay, so
why do you call it a feel? It doesn't feel red. I've experienced. Is it feeling red? Why are you adding the term feel to it, right? Now it's a phenomenal feel. Seem to be having, feel phenomenon. Seem to be having the phenomenal feel of red. He's just throwing words at you, man, right? It's just words. And it's because he's trying to circumvent that, which, in my opinion, is the reduction base of philosophy. That he is attempting to solve it by throwing words at it, right? But these words must have a meaning that is predefined before he's using them, right? And what point do you get to something that would be a philosophical reduction base from these words? Well, in my opinion, it must end. Either it ends in nowhere, so the words do not have meaning, or they end in the reduction base, which I would say is the qualia, right? So he's just juggling words and creating smoke screens and mirrors. So you're so confused at this point in this word salad that you might end up saying, okay, I guess he has something there, right? Because I can't refute it, right? Just like with the hole in the car. Okay, I can't, have a big overview of all these words. So I guess I have to accept that there might be something there because I can't refute it, right? So he's creating a car that is so big and cumbersome that you can't find the hole in it, right? Or that at least he attempts to do that. What I'm saying is there is actually no car there, right? He's saying that pile of, whatever is a car. I'm saying that's not a car there. It's something different, right? You have some foundational problem in your philosophy you haven't identified. And that's why you're running around in your own circles of abstractions and hypotheses and models and theories and all this and words in general, right? Just throwing words at it, right? We are at this point where he's saying this seem to be having a phenomenal feel of red. I mean, can you believe it, man, right? Give me a fucking break.
They're interpreting seeming in phenomenal terms. To seem to have an experience of a certain sort is to have an experience with the same phenomenal feel as that one. So, in general, it assumes that when we talk about how things seem...
What was that sound? Was it's the dinner bell from the wife or what? I hope it wasn't me. I'm not the hell's bells.
To us, we're talking about the mental qualities they produce in us. Okay, so just start with perceptual seeming, not introspective seeming. Just when we seem to see something that isn't really there, a phenomenal appearance of the thing is still being presented.
When we seem, I don't like the term we, right? So when you seem to perceive something that isn't really there, but how do you get to the conclusion that it isn't really there? If I'm experiencing red over there, right, pointing, how would I get to some kind of conclusion whether it's there or not? The redness is there, right? Otherwise, how do you get to a point where you say, I don't think it's there? Well, the redness is there. You can't point and say, I'm having an experience of red that isn't there. There isn't anything else there. Or there's nothing there. There's red there, right? What the hell is he saying? I mean, how does this guy get around in his experiences? I mean, if he's distrusting all the colors and sounds and taste and so on, how the hell does he navigate, man? Right? It must be cumbersome. But I bet you he does it just like me, right? He looks at the green pickles and say, "Yeah, that's the pickles," right? Oh, that's the white feta cheese. Let me have some, right? He uses it just like everybody else. He just sits there in his lecture chamber and and talk about it might be something different, yeah. But how would you get to it, right? Oh,
In the Cartesian theatre, as it were, we're still having corresponding phenomenal image of the thing, as it were. So,
an image of the thing. What thing? What thing are you talking about, right? Well, what is thing? How do you get to thing, right? Do you have a thing sense? How does that thing arrive in your awareness so you can talk about it? You can't just conjure up something you call thing and say, "Oh, now that's thing." You have to point to how you get to it, right? If you're talking about an external reality that is external to your experiences, how the hell do you get to it, right? I mean, it's this paradox that is at the foundations you have to address. Otherwise, you're just throwing around words, this bullshit, man, right?
this is how the objector to illusionism is understanding seeming. They're understanding seemings as phenomenal appearances. Okay?
But you are the one talking about seeming. You are the one bringing in the word seeming. It might seem to you, but that's not the same as it seems for everybody else. Maybe you're the one who's, screwed up with this seeming, right? There is no alternative to the actual qualia. If I'm experiencing red, I'm experiencing red. I can't tell myself, I can't decipher whether I should have the experience of red or I shouldn't have the experience of red or, whatever, right? There is the thing you're experiencing, or the thing, there is that which you are experiencing. And there's no alternative. It might change over time. But even if it changes, it's something different. I can't say it should be like it was before, or the before was incorrect, now it's correct that it's this way now. I can't know that. I can't get to any explanation of it, right? You have to understand, you have to address this paradox in your thinking. You can't both be inside your mind and outside your mind at the same time. If you're delineating, you're creating a dichotomy between the inside of the mind and there's a reality or world or whatever realm outside your mind. Okay, if you have created that, stated that axiom more or less implicitly in your presentation here, then you have to explain how the hell you get to understanding that is something that is outside your experience. Because if it's outside your experience, by definition, you cannot experience it, right? And if it's only things that are within your experience, how did you get to that there was something outside that? Based on what? Your inner experiences telling you there is an outside there. No, because it's colors and sounds and taste and so on. There's nothing about it that says, yeah, it's an outside, right? And if all of that experience is outside, what is that inside then, right? You're lost in this problem because you do not understand that there is a problem, right?
So, then, of course, if we understand seeming in that way, then if we want to talk, as the illusionist does, about seeming to have phenomenal properties, then we're going to have to construe that in seeming in phenomenal terms too. So we're going to have to say that to seem to introspect a phenomenal property that isn't really there, then that if we seem to introspect a phenomenal property that isn't really there, then a phenomenal appearance of that property is going to be presented in the Cartesian theatre. And the phenomenal appearance of a phenomenal property is, I guess, going to be the very same property.
Oh, man.
So
I'm going to kill myself now. No, so don't worry. It's a figure of speech, right? Okay, let's see if I can read. But the phenomenal appearance of a phenomenal property is the very same property. How can you write something like that? I mean, what the hell fucking planet is he from? But the phenomenal appearance of a phenomenal property is the very same property. I mean, I can't understand that. I'm sorry, I can't follow you there. I simply refuse to. I won't even try, right? I'm going to screw with my mind on a level I'm not, prepared to do, right? Oh, man. Also this, so if we seem to, again, the we, I don't like that we, speak about yourself, please, right? To introspect a phenomenal property that isn't really there. A phenomenal appearance of the property is presented in the Cartesian theater. So it's like, it's almost like he's deliberately making this so fucking stupid and convoluted that nobody can understand what he says. And in the hope that we are so, that I am and you are so weak-minded and weak-willed that we won't reject it, but we are going to say, because professor, that, okay, I guess he has a point there, right? I mean, I can't even deconstruct it, man, right? I mean, if you have come to this point with me, right? And I'm sitting here saying I'm throwing in the towel and saying, I can't do this, man, right? I mean, this guy is from another planet. I don't know, planet Qualia, right? Planet Illusionist. I'm dumbfounded. I don't know what to say. I guess we have to just, keep going, right? See where it goes.
Oh. It looks incoherent, or at least circular. So the idea is that if we understand seeming in phenomenal terms, then illusionism is going to be incoherent, because we're going to have to talk about having phenomenal appearances of phenomenal appearances, and they're going to be the very same thing. So look, we can illustrate that with a little diagram here. This would be the Cartesian theatre view of illusion or seeming. To have an illusion of something, I talk of illusion here, but it's just the same thing as seeming. To have an illusion of something is for an appearance of the thing to be showing in the Cartesian theatre. So when the thing itself actually isn't there. So here, the
Sorry, I'll get back to normal here. I can't. I just wanted to blow it up a bit so I can see it more clearly.
The egg isn't really there, but there's still an appearance of it showing.
But please explain. How do you know there isn't an egg there? There is an experience of egg, at least, right? If you planted a fucking egg there must be an experience of what you call egg, or at least the colors of yellow and white, with gray around it, so you can conceptualize that particular thing there as egg, right? I mean, otherwise, what the hell are you fucking saying then? So if there's an egg there in your experience, how do you refute that as not being there? Where do you go to say, there isn't really an egg? Where do you go, right? Do you jump outside your mind and look at so the mirroring of the photographic memory of the photographic chip inside that mind has wrongfully identified this thing over here as an egg, but you can't. You are in your mind, right? You're not outside your mind. How can you get to a point where you can say, no, that we might have an experience of egg there, but that really isn't an egg? While at the same time as you have an experience of egg. And there's no alternative. There's no manual somewhere you can go and look whether or not there should be an experience of egg. Right? I'm speechless about this screwed up philosophy, right?
That's the Cartesian view of illusion or of seeming. This person is seeming to see an egg in virtue of there being a phenomenal appearance of an egg in his Cartesian theatre. So, to have the illusion of a show in a Cartesian theatre, which is what the illusionist is claiming we have, then there'd have to be an appearance of a Cartesian theatre showing in a second Cartesian theatre. So if that Cartesian theatre isn't there, but the person seems to be aware of a Cartesian theatre, then there's going to have to be a second Cartesian theatre in which a phenomenal appearance of that Cartesian theatre is shown.
What?
So if we take this sort of view of illusion, of seeming, where we explain illusion...
I have to have an illusion of something is for an appearance of the thing to be showing in the Cartesian theory. To have an illusion of something is for an appearance of the thing. But what do you mean by thing? You have to refer to that which you're trying to call an illusion, which is the qualia, right? The qualia is the colors, right? And the blemishes, the area of the color compared to something around that area that you're conceptualizing as an egg. That's not a qualia, right? That's not the qualia. There's not eggness to it. There's still just colors and sounds and taste and so on, right? There's not eggness arrived through some senses. So this is attached from the inside. Your mind saying, well, egg, right? In one, there's a way to say it, right? It's not saying you're not hearing the word egg, right? But you know what I mean, right? And he says, so to have the illusion of a show, but how do you know it's an illusion? You can't just fucking slap a word on something and say, aha, I've proven it's an illusion. Because it's also circular, because you're trying to argue that it is an illusion. So you can talk about having an illusion. If you want to prove it's an illusion, right? Then it's circular, to the best of my understanding. There must be an appearance of a
seeming
a
in terms
CT
of a,
showing in the second
of a
CT.
phenomenon.
Why do you need that second one? What is that? If you have an experience of egg, or you have qualia that the mind cognizes as egg, why do you need more than that? It's not like when you're standing down in the shop and buying your pickles, you say, okay, now I have to wait for another Cartesian theater to appear in order to be sure. And then there's another Cartesian theater, and then another Cartesian. I mean, who works like that, man, right? It has to work in your everyday. It has to be a reflection on how things work. You can't just invent or remove things from the way things work in order for your ideas of how it should be to fit, right? It's the other way around. Your philosophy have to fit with how it works. A car mechanic cannot just pretend it to be a motorcycle, right? He has to accept that I'm working on a fucking car here, right?
Phenomenal appearance, then the idea that phenomenal appearances themselves might be illusions is going to be circular, because it's going to just involve having another Cartesian theatre, and if we try to do the same thing with that theatre, then we'd run into the danger of an endless regress. Okay, so that's, I think, how the objection, the no-gap objection, gets to work. But of course, the illusionist just doesn't take that view of what seeming is. Illusionists don't have any truck with phenomenal appearances and Cartesian theatres at all when it comes to perception or introspection. They just don't think of seeming in that way. For illusionists, seemings, whether perceptual or introspective, don't involve mental qualities at all. For the illusionist to seem to perceive something, to seem to perceive the egg, is just to be.
Just listen. I'm sorry. He has some kind of speech impediment, right? But it's so annoying, man, right? It's like it's twice the length, this thing, as it could possibly have been, just because you're sort of stumbling over your own words all the time, right? I'm not trying to, attack you personally or anything like that, but it is freaking annoying, let me tell you, right?
In that way. For illusionists, seemings, whether perceptual or introspective, don't involve mental qualities at all. For the illusionist to seem to perceive something, to seem to perceive the egg, is just to be
listen to that.
Perceive something, to seem to perceive the egg, is just to be in an informational and reactive state, similar to.
I'm not trying to, get at him for this thing, right? But it doesn't help, right? It doesn't help. Why, if you have this speech impediment, right? Why don't you state it in the beginning and say, yes, I am suffering from this. Please bear with me. I'm trying my best to make this as short and precise as I can, so I don't have to, encumber you by this stuttering or whatever that thing is, right? And it seems like he's almost reveling in this thing he has going with this stuttering, right? I mean, it's and I guess you can't blame a person for being like they are, because it's a product of all their childhood and parents and all sorts of shit, right? And it's possibly I don't know what's stuttering. When people stutter, it's like their mind is ahead of their speech or something. I don't know. I'm just thinking that, I mean, I'm willing to. I'm just sitting here saying I'm trying to come up with the words while I'm speaking. Well, it's not in my first language, but it's if you need to go and be somebody who teaches people about hardcore stuff that might be difficult to explain and so on, you might want to remove aspects of things that doesn't work in that direction for you, right? If you have this speech impediment, then get it done with, right? Get it fixed. If you want to be a public person who is going to sit there for 8 or 10 hours lecturing me about this, right? It's just one of these. I'm not trying to get at him, but I just find it symptomatic for this whole thing that whoever finances him, right? They don't care how many impediments he has or how convoluted his lecture series are and so on, right? Apparently not. I mean, if I was financing his philosophy, I would demand that it would be precise and concise and edit this down to something that can be handled in one sitting, right? So that you don't have to sit here for hours and hours and hours or days and days and days trying to figure out what the hell he's talking about with sentences like the on the previous slide, where it's basically, I mean, it's 3 circles within an enigma and so on, right? An enigma within a paradox within a whatever. There's a quote from the JFK movie with Joe Pesci and Kevin Costner and so on. It's a riddle within an enigma wrapped in a. I don't remember exactly. Let me see if I can find it. I'm just. Why not? Um, I think we're going to end this very soon anyway, so let's just finish on a. Um, when um, there's a particular interesting character played by Joe Pesci in the JFK movie. Joe Pesci as David Ferry, yes, in 1991. It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma. Yeah, let me let's just have it. That I feel that a very similar way with Keith Frankish here, right? He is simply a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma. All right, let's have it from Joe Pesci. Ah, it's too slow. It's too slow. You can go look for yourself. And yes, what can I say? Um, it's a riddle inside an enigma and so on, right? I mean, I mean, if you have a clear understanding of what the hell it's saying, would you mind illuminating me and presenting it very? You have to be not just I think it's something like this. No. Then you have to be able to say in 5 lines or something like it is this because of this done, right? If you have that, please illuminate me, right? And join the Discord board and so on, right? Let me know. Let me hear from you, right? And otherwise, I mean, what the hell, man? I mean, he is dealing with something that is fucking important in my everyday, right? I'm using my senses, man, all the time. I'm using it all the time. The qualia. I'm fucking interested in my qualia. I have a music collection, 3,000 plus CDs and a couple of hundred vinyl records, right? I enjoy the sound of music, right? Should I just say it's an illusion, right? I mean, what the hell, man, right? See, it's not just something. I'm sitting here talking about some interesting philosophy. It's fucking it's world changing. If my qualia is an illusion, but you have to do some fucking good philosophical argumentation in order for me to accept this, right? And even then, I might not accept it because I have if I feel I have a better philosophy that's better grounded and so on, right? This is not just some left hand interesting. Listen to me. You're trying to fucking change people's fundamental understanding of how they work, man, right? Okay. Share, like, and subscribe, please, if you come this far. And see you in the next one.